Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jennifer Jennings-Schaefer, Assistant Director of State Advocacy at 0 to 3, and I am so pleased to be here today with our amazing panel to talk about parent partnerships in practice. This is such an important topic. We know that achieving transformational, equitable change for children and families requires us to find ways to create and to maintain authentic, impactful partnerships with shared power between parents and traditional state-based early childhood advocacy organizations. Each bring critical pieces of the puzzle. Parents bring powerful lived experience of the issues facing families with young children, relationships within their communities, creative ideas for solutions, and a powerful voice in advocacy with policymakers, which is just to name a few things. Staff in state-based early childhood advocacy organizations bring knowledge of the ins and outs of the policymaking process, which can often be complicated. They bring technical knowledge of policy areas and advocacy strategy and access to decision makers. Together, these different but overlapping sets of skills and knowledge give us the ingredients for powerful change. Getting there, however, requires openness to new ways of doing things. It requires time and commitment to relationship building and to the trial and error process of figuring out what works in different places. Our panelists today are all engaged in this journey to build parent partnership strategies and structures that will advance changes in policy and access to services that children and families in their states need to thrive. Maine, Texas, and North Carolina are all participating in a project supported by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation focused on increasing equitable access to Head Start and Early Head Start, with a strong emphasis on parent partnership and advancing equity. That project launched in the spring of 2021, so we are just about a year in. I should note that Washington and New Jersey are also participating in that project, and national partners include 0 to 3, Partnership for America's Children, United Parent Leaders Action Network, and Counterpart Consulting. As states participating in this project have been trying new approaches to their work to co-develop policy and advocacy goals related to Head Start and Early Head Start, they've also been thinking about how those approaches extend to other areas of their work. In many cases, parents involved in the project have raised things that didn't necessarily fit into a narrow Head Start, Early Head Start issue area box, because we know, of course, that's not how families' lives work. And so one evolution in the project has been responding to that. I will note that the way that parent partnerships are structured within the states varies, reflecting the fact that there is no one right way to do this. In North Carolina, they've created a parent leadership committee as well as a broader stakeholder committee on which members of the parent committee are represented. In Maine, they've recently established the Maine Parent Advocacy Network, which works to amplify the voices of Maine families through advocacy and program governance. And in Texas, they've conducted a landscape survey to highlight the voices of parents across the state and are working to intentionally integrate parent voice into their stakeholder coalition. Before we jump into panel introductions, a couple of really quick housekeeping notes. Today's webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to access it later. We encourage you to use the chat feature to engage with each other throughout the webinar and to use the Q&A feature to ask questions of our panelists. And we will get to as many of those as we are able to during the Q&A at the end. And now I am excited to introduce our panel. I'm going to ask if each of you can share your name and your role in the project. I'm just going to go through where people are on my screen. Israel, if you could kick us off.
Hello, my name is Israel Mosley. I'm calling in from Waterville, Maine, and my role in this project is I am the project coordinator for the Maine Children's Alliance, but I am also the executive director of the Maine Parent Advocacy Network.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Hello all, my name is Stephanie Eglinton and I am the executive director of the Maine Children's Alliance in Augusta, Maine.
Makia?
Hi, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I'm Makia Thomas. I'm with Children at Risk, and I'm the associate director of BCE there. And on this project, I've just been kind of leading the charge and just, the Texas team. So that's what I do.
Anna?
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Ana Hernandez, and I'm a parent for Avance, and I'm excited.
Thank you. Kristen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kristen Davis. I'm the Infantile Project Manager here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm overseeing the project.
And Joy.
Hey everybody, my name is Joy Spencer. I am serving as a co-parent lead for our parent leadership group to give recommendations around our Head Start and early Head Start programming.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm very excited to dig into this conversation. Before we dig in, I do want to note for everyone listening today, we are taking this as a conversation, so it's not going to be the type of webinar where each of the state gives you a presentation with a PowerPoint deck about the overview of their work. We really wanted to do this in a way that would allow us to zero in on some of the interesting features of the work happening around parent partnerships in Maine, Texas, and North Carolina. It is, of course, a gigantic topic, and so clearly we're not going to be able to cover every aspect of their work in this area. But what we're hoping is that this conversation lifts up some of the key highlights and lessons learned of their work so far. And so jumping right in, one of the things we know is that effective parent partnership strategies begin with intentionally recruiting and welcoming parents into the work in ways that recognize the deep expertise and networks that already exist in communities. Joy, I'm hoping that you can speak about your experience of being asked to participate as a parent co-lead in this project and how you to ensure that other invited families have felt welcomed into the space, and what you see as the role of institutional partners in helping to make that welcoming happen.
Yeah, sure. So thank you. I would like to uplift just the pivotal kind of efforts that North Carolina is making to ensure collaboration between parents and between some of the institutions that have kind of the most access and touch points with families. And so what I would like to highlight about our work is that some parent leaders were called in at the beginning and planning stages of this project. And we were really instrumental in recruiting other parents. We really sat down to understand the goals of the project and what information people wanted to draw out of the project. And from there, as co-parent leaders, we sought out to engage folks in target counties and kind of put our ear to the ground, who is already being a great advocate, who is experiencing in real time some of the challenges that we're trying to navigate. And we were also given the autonomy to diversify our group. So we intentionally recruited parents who had issues with obtaining Head Start and early Head Start services. For example, we intentionally recruited parents from areas who have a great need to expand access to their Head Start and early Head Start programs. So it allowed us to have a really well-rounded perspective and get a good kind of snapshot of the landscape across the entire state of North Carolina to the best of our abilities. And then, as you highlighted earlier, we had the opportunity to really take a deep dive and get those parent perspectives, but then take those parents and join them and have that conversation with key stakeholders that work for local government and that have, a broader view around policy and what can and cannot be done, so that we crafted and kind of came down and hammered out some really concrete, doable policy recommendations that we can attach action steps to. And everyone was invested, everyone had buy-in because we were brought in at the very beginning of the conversation and the beginning of the process.
Thanks so much, Joy. I think you raised up some really important things there about the importance of bringing parents in early in the process and sort of co-developing that table. So Kristen, I know that you have thought a lot about the importance of relationships in this work, both relationships with parents, but also relationships with partners who are operating in traditional systems and power structures for whom centering parents in decision-making may feel new or even threatening. I'm hoping that you can talk about how you've navigated that.
Absolutely. So when we, as Joy just spoke, when we really first set out to form our parent leadership team, we wanted them to have a very intimate relationship with me as the project manager. So we identified pretty early that in order to bridge those relationships, that we needed to first start with identifying when is the best time to really try to connect with them. And I was able to determine that that was later in the evening or first thing in the morning when they were actually able to have two-way conversation, whether it be via phone or email, just so that they felt like they were individual in this process and we weren't just bringing them together to share their experiences and that they weren't going to go anywhere. So we really started there and worked with the parents, especially with Joy and our other co-lead Shayla, to really meet parents where they were so that we could ensure that we were providing the best environment for them to feel safe to share those authentic experiences. And then when it translated to the stakeholder coalition, it was really important for us to keep parents' voice at the center of our work and honor their experiences as true experiences. And we really focused on understanding that even though we may set out a stage or a foundation of how we intend for services to work for parents, that may not necessarily be each parent's experience with those strategies, and to honor that and really listen to what parents are communicating to us as what their challenges have been so that we could go back and really work specifically with them to navigate those challenges. And I would say that the stakeholder coalition, it took some time and warming up to really understand that even though like I may in my mind have this perfect plan that as grantees, as we have noticed across all of the states, that every grantee is going to have their own way of executing their program and then meeting those parents where they are.
Thanks so much, Kristen. Shifting gears a little bit, sort of, you know, we've kind of talked about some of this, you know, welcoming and thinking about the work differently, but thinking a little bit more now about some of the logistical factors that have to go into consideration when designing and implementing a parent partnership strategy, which includes how to effectively engage parents across a whole state and how to work effectively with partners to connect with parents. Makia, I'm hoping that you can share some of your lessons learned from this past year as you've worked to lift up the voices of frontier, rural, and metro communities in such a large state.
Yeah, so Texas is really big. So trying to, you know, connect with families and parents specifically across the state initially was very difficult. I think the lesson learned, I will take the overall is like trusting the process is going to be a big part of that, and just slow and steady, right? As Kristen and Joy kind of spoke around relationships and really establishing that co-design piece, we really are the organization Children at Risk that I'm a part of. We really leaned on Avance and then another grantee to really kind of get ourselves out there in the early Head Start world, and then to connect to families that way. And Avance has a really good reach, and I believe Dr. Granillo is on the call, but really she was a really big part of connecting us to not only just other Avance locations around the state, but also other grantees that she had connections with. So we were able to really tap into not only big metropolitan areas like Dallas and Fort Worth and Houston and San Antonio, but we also could touch Hidalgo County, which is further south in Texas, and we're able to touch El Paso as well. So really trusting the process that it does take time to establish those relationships, but in order for us to really get an understanding of what was going on for families around the state, we did a landscape survey as well. And that really opened our eyes to seeing what's happening around the state. And Ms. Hernandez is actually going to speak as well. And that's the parent we were put in contact with that we started this journey with. And as we built out the landscape survey, we did a lot of interviews with not only executive directors of programs, but CEOs of programs, and just we were able to touch a lot of stakeholders around the state. And those stakeholders that then connected us to their parents. And we were able to have parent interviews to really see what's the disconnect, what access looked like, what did enrollment look like for you. And I will say Ms. Hernandez has been on the journey the whole time. And in twofold, once we did that survey, got feedback, had findings, we went back and presented it to everybody. So that co-design piece was really important for us to move forward. And again, I think initially wanting to jump into something and wanting to see it go fast. And because we know Texas is so big, we haven't been able to touch everybody yet, but we really are being intentional about having, parent leaders out of the cities and locations and regions that we have been able to touch base with, and really starting to connect them then. And then even with our stakeholder coalition, the process of showing them the findings and seeing how parents are at the center of this as well has been key. So getting them to that point, like, yeah, we need parent engagement has been the foundation of a lot of our conversations that we had thus far. We started to have parents on some of our monthly calls that we began in January. And then really we want to build out that parent leadership component as well. So again, trusting the process, and it's going to take time, but it's really been exciting to kind of see the growth. Although it's been slow and steady, there's been growth and kind of the light bulbs going off in meetings, because even our Texas Head Start Collaborative Office Director, she sits in on the calls, and every month we're adding someone new. So having ECI or early childhood intervention representation there, and just kind of seeing that there's lots of voices that need to be at the table to support our families and continuing to have those parent voices centered as well in the work that we're doing.
Thanks, Makia. I mean, I think that point you make about, slow and steady, right? That like really understanding the landscape, particularly when you are working in a state that is, geographically both ginormous and diverse, that it takes the time it takes to build those relationships with those grantees and to do, sort of that in-depth landscape survey work so that you really understand what you're working with before you, move forward. So thank you for those points. Turning to Anna, you've built on your experience as a policy council parent to support this project to build connections with parents across Texas. I'm hoping that you can talk about what that experience of outreach and recruitment has looked like for you as a parent leader, and what has worked well or what has been challenging.
As a parent who has been involved in the Parent Policy Council, I have learned how important it is to advocate. I have advocated for social emotional support and what they are teaching in the classroom, so I can also help my children at home. Avante supports us.
Oh, I think you went on mute. There you go.
For other families in my communities. I have been an ambassador for Early Head Start in San Antonio. I recruited friends and family, as well as staff that I work with. I originally started with my cousin, and I was able to talk to her about the resources, and we eventually got her sister on board. I shared with Mika that the word of mouth is the best way to recruit. In-person meetings are important to me, but virtual is okay, but I like in-person conversations more. COVID has made it hard, but we're still working. We are just beginning to connect with other cities like Houston, Fort Worth, and Hidalgo. I'm excited to see where this goes statewide and to know we're bringing this knowledge can benefit more parents like me. Avante gave me the opportunity to work my way up in leadership. I eventually became a Parent Policy Council president, and I was able to be an example for other parents and take pride in my work. I have taken my experience and my knowledge with me. My brother's passing was very difficult for me. It took a lot out of me. I was able to speak at his funeral, which was really hard for me, but I was so proud that I was able to do that. How do we get the word out there? What do we provide? More trainings for parents to gain more knowledge. I've been able to take this responsibility to get information from the food bank and other parents. I've also been able to partner with other councils like Uvalde. We've been able to see how they've invested monies in their schools differently, in buses that they needed, teachers that they needed, subs, because their teachers were out sick as well. We're taking this approach statewide. It's a good experience to see the backside of Avante. The partnership helped me out because it gives me a different perspective. And in closing, I just want to say this. The phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, is absolutely true. But somewhere along the way, we lost that communication. And as a result, families are missing out on crucial learning experience and much needed support systems, as I once needed. Our voices, our community matters. Let's gather our villagers and our partnerships with each of these states and get these parents the guidance and support and a chance to a better education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. Really important things there. And, and I think, the points that you made about one, building upon your own personal journey as a parent who's experienced, the early Head Start program, but also the importance of relationships between parents and engaging community directly, which I think is something that I've heard across states. That's something I know Joy talks a lot about. That there is this relationship-based piece of engaging parents in the work that is such an important part of working with parent leaders and designing these kinds of projects. So thank you so much for sharing that. Pivoting a little bit now to thinking about structure. As I said earlier, we know that there's no one right way to structure and implement a parent partnership strategy. And that figuring out what works involves learning and adapting as you go. I think it's part of that openness piece. And Stephanie, you've reached a place now where Maine has a parent advocacy network that operates with a fairly high degree of autonomy. I'm hoping you can talk about how where you are now differs from what you were thinking at the beginning of the project and what led you here.
Thank you. So the structure of the project as we initially laid it out was that there would be a leadership team made up of equal number of parents and equal number of organizational partners. And that was so that no one sort of, there was equal representation there. And this really does work well because it's just been a great demonstration about how each benefit from the expertise and perspective of each other. And then we had envisioned that this leadership team would be doing the recruitment and responsible for building a broader coalition of parents related to Head Start, early Head Start. And instead, what really developed was the parents themselves created a statewide multi-issue coalition that is fully under their own governance. And that's this group, the Maine Parent Advocacy Network, that Michael has really helped lead. And that group has really filled this advocacy demand in the state for parent voice to be engaged at the start on issues and on their own terms. So that was all very exciting. And at the same time, there's still work to be done to figure out how this group connects and overlaps with other circles of groups. We have a parent ambassador program in Maine that trains parents. So, those are some of the issues that we're still working on. And I think for the Maine Children's Alliance, right, one of the goals of this grant opportunity was to build our own capacity in parent engagement. So we're thinking about, okay, now that we, how do we balance letting go and then still being connected, right? And still having the relationships if we just sort of, delegate it all away. So, we still need connection in order to support each other. And I think that's some of the questions we're having now.
Those are good questions. And I think, really gets to this idea of how do you be prepared to follow where the work leads you once you get into it, right? And it may not be where you thought it was going to go. So I think that's such a part of this story. Israel, I'm hoping you can talk about how the structure of the Parent Advocacy Network supports shifting power to parents and setting them up to show up as full partners in this work.
Yeah, so one of the big goals of this was to increase ownership for parents. There's a lot of experiences, myself included, in our system where you're invited to be a leader or to participate or to be a representative, and you wind up in a situation where you're the only parent there, and you're pretty much just there to check a box and sit in a seat, and everyone works around you. And a lot of parents, even in really good programs, a lot of parents were like, I want something more. I want to have some sort of just ownership and buy-in to these things. I want to be able to say a thing and have my voice be heard. And so what we did was we started to build a structure where parents themselves could start taking leadership roles that they themselves created. And so it stops becoming a thing where we're saying, okay, we need a parent to do X thing. And we have a parent coming up to us and saying, I would like to do X thing. How do I get there? And it's a much different conversation to have, especially from a parent perspective. One of the other things that we wanted to address was that there's no formal organizing body in our state. If we have a very, very large legislature, we're a small state, we only have 1.3 million people, but we have the second largest legislature in the entire country. We have 200 members of our legislature, which means that even if we are a small state, you're still only governing over and representing very small portions of it. And that becomes very hard logistically when you have people who are all the way up at north in what we call the county, where you may have about 300 people in your town and your town doesn't actually have a name. Like, so how do you get all the way up there and still talk to the people who are in like Portland, which might be represented by about 4 different people? And the answer was, it's not easy. You really do have to bring people in and build something where they can know from the get-go what's going to happen and how it's going to happen and how they plug into it. And I think one of the like big successes of that structure is we've had parents come up to us. Our COO of the Maine Parent Advocacy Network came up to us and was like, I have an expansion plan for Northern Maine, which is up in the county. I'm like, yes, like we can do that. Here's all of the details that you gave me. I'll plug this into this structure. Here's the outcome. Now we have a plan that you understand, I understand, and we can bring to other people and have this conversation of why does this need to be here? Who are we going to serve? Where is the funding going to come from? Who is going to do all the work on the ground? We have all of those conversations, and that's something that parents up here didn't have before. And it's a really interesting and unique experience because we're kind of out in no man's land doing these things. But our parents have been really engaged in the whole process. So it's been really positive and uplifting for everybody involved.
Thank you so much. Yeah, one of the phrase you said about up in no man's land, I feel like that's a lot of like some of what this work is being prepared to like step out and do things differently than the way that we've traditionally done them in this work, and to be open to not knowing necessarily where the work is going to take us, where parents are going to take us. So really, really appreciate that. And I feel like that's very much a theme I've heard across everything that all of you shared. So, one of the other, sort of key ingredients, right, is figuring out how do we leverage those different skills and expertise that parent leaders and staff working in state-based early childhood advocacy organizations each bring to the work. What does it mean to bring those together? What does it mean to recognize and appreciate each other and leverage those skills, because we need them both. And so, I'd now like to turn, and I'm going to start with the state advocacy organization partners first, and ask if you can share something that you have learned from your parent partners in the course of this project so far, and something that you appreciate. And yet again, I'm going to work based on where you sit on my screen. And so I'm going to go to you first, Stephanie.
Thanks. Well, actually, Jennifer, you said this in the introduction, and it's probably obvious, but the parent leaders have really helped us understand that families don't compartmentalize their lives right into issue area buckets, and that issues around getting services and supports for their children is so connected with all the challenges that people face in their life, from housing to food to whatever. I guess something I really appreciate is Michael's grassroots organizing skills, which is really a different skill than what we've had at the Maine Children's Alliance. And that he used advocacy issues as a way to engage parents and get them excited, rather than perhaps the approach in my linear mind that would have been bringing parents together and figuring it all out and then deciding on some issue. And then he actually used the advocacy to get parents engaged in a way where they could immediately make a difference. And I think that was really interesting, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephanie. Kia.
Sure. I feel like as though, especially, and I'm going to speak mainly about Ms. Hernandez, but I feel like by working with her, it really has pushed me to think more outside the box on our approach to like engaging families and parents. And just really because I'm hearing her experience through working as a parent policy president and her experience going through something she calls San Antonio Speaks Up or SA Speaks Up, and just a training and just like her level of involvement and just drive to like pull in more families. Because I think, as Stephanie put it, that linear, like, oh, I think I can package it this way. And it's like, no, these things kind of work too. So it's definitely pushed me out of my element. And it's really been a joy to kind of see like, oh, like this is why like that part, we're so interdependent on one another as we make the work go forward. And I just really am appreciative of being able to partner with her. And I mean, as she kind of spoke earlier, it's just like, in order for us to keep this going, we need one another. So I'm just excited about the work, and I'm just appreciative that I've been able to like go on this journey. And she keeps my drive going, because I see the intensity and just excitement about the work we're doing.
Thank you. Kristen.
I would say probably what I've learned most is that parents are experts at being parents, right? And I think that oftentimes we don't honor that enough. And as other early care professionals, we come to the table and we're ready to fix the issue, but we're not experiencing the issue, right? We're not going through what parents are going through. And just learning that sometimes it's important to take a step back and allow parents the opportunity to, and we're gonna keep saying this today, share their authentic experiences and what they've walked through, because then we can understand how the systems are impacting them. And since they are using the systems, we need to learn directly from parents or families just in general, right? So I think that learning to sit back and allow the space and create the foundation for parents to shine and lead would be the biggest takeaway that I've had. And the thing that I'm most appreciative of is, of course, Joy and Shayla. I could not have asked for better co-leads to the entire parent leadership team. They literally came in and led this entire project, which helped us to then be able to interact and build these relationships with families and with parents, so that they can continue to have a voice, right? And as we look for this transition to where we really start centering parents at the table, and not making a table and then inviting parents to the table, but creating the table with the parents so that their voices truly are central, would be those are the most things that I've learned in my takeaways and what I'm most appreciative of.
Thank you so much. So flipping it now, I'm going to ask the parent leaders to share what is something that you have learned from your early childhood state advocacy organization partners, and what is something that you appreciate? And again, going by my screen, I'm going to start with Israel.
I think the most important thing that I've learned, Maine's in a unique position because we're in this project as well as the early childhood special education project, and so I have two teams of like state advocates that I get to work with, and I think the biggest takeaway that I've had is that a lot of the people who run these programs in our state are actually the people who were like in my seat like 20 years ago. Our entire system has been built by people who have like really pushed year after year and kept with it and stuck with it. And we sometimes, as parents, tend to get this very stereotypical view of who runs these things. And we forget that they are people too, and that they come from somewhere. And usually that place that they're coming from is a place of experience and of like genuinely like fighting how they know how to fight and for the same things that parents are usually trying to get. And really the big difference is just coming to the point where you're speaking the same language. It's a difficult thing because we come from a place where we're very immediate, at least in my experience. And so when someone tells you to take a long-term view, or when they use certain concepts that make you feel like that's really indirect and impersonal, it's specifically because they're from a different perspective on it. It's not that they don't feel the same way that you do, it's that they have to use a different lens.
Those are great points. Thank you. Anna.
All right. Hello. Again, I'm just gonna say that this partnership is really exciting for me. I love the knowledge that I'm learning, the partnership with you guys, and just experience. And like I said, it's just opens my eyes and makes me wonder why other parents, like I said, are not involved, and what's stopping them. You know, it makes me want to dig in a little bit more. You know, so I'm just really thankful for this opportunity and for this time. That's all really I have to say. This is a great opportunity. So yes, that's it.
Thank you. Joy.
So yeah, just to echo what other parent leaders have said, I just see a really great like learning opportunity as well. And I also agree that we tend to be on the same page as far as wanting to increase access to families, increase, information. It's just that we have the opportunity to come together and merge like methodology and merge like how we would do the work. And I think that creates a really special value. You kind of blend two different types of expertise and you come out with this really new product that's, effective and innovative, and all sides have this kind of like dedication and commitment to making it work. And I've really enjoyed learning kind of some of the things that organizations and systems do have in place to try to, to help and support families. And in some instances, it was just a matter of, oh, now we know like what protections exist, for us. And in some instances, quite frankly, it was a matter of accountability, like, oh, so this thing does exist and you are supposed to be doing it in this way. Well, now let's, retrain staff to make sure that they're presenting all options or whatever the case may be. So just extreme value in seeing parent voice as one that should be at the table and one that should have like some say in decision making, and then seeing from both sides, how we're still, you know, we're on the same team, and just figuring out how to come to consensus about how to get there in a way that feels comfortable to everyone. It's just been a really valuable experience.
Thank you so much. There was a lot there in all of those, so thank you. We do have some questions, so let's go ahead and dig into a few of those, and then if we have time at the end, we can look back to some final thoughts. But you know, one of the questions here that I think is really relevant is, you know, I think part of what we often run into, right, is that folks who are working in paid positions, say whether they're in state agencies or state advocacy organizations, are compensated for their time when they come to work and do this work. But then sometimes that can be a little bit of an afterthought when we ask parents to engage in this work. And so one of the questions is, how are you working to compensate and support parents who are supporting you in this work? And I really invite anyone who wants to jump in with that. I think I'd be interested to hear from that from both those who are on the parent leader side of that experience, as well as those in the state advocacy organization side, because I think that's such an important part of doing the work both effectively and respectfully.
So I'll say for North Carolina, we set up parent stipends from the beginning to compensate all of our parents that were participating, and our co-leads actually receive a different stipend because their time, I mean, we were paying them for their time, right? And it's the time that they spend planning the meeting, because we meet with our co-leads prior to, and they really kind of lay out the agenda and how the meeting is going to go and be orchestrated. And I think it's Saisha is just asking also. No, we don't. We use like a bill. We have Billco. It's an invoice system, so it's direct deposit. And the parents really got to choose whether or not they wanted direct deposit into their account or if they wanted a paper check. We did not, we didn't make that choice for them. They got to sign up for the service however they wanted to. And then after each meeting, or if they choose to wait to the end of this project term, they can submit all of their, it's almost like when they sign in for the meeting and say the meeting they attended, and then they claim their stipend amount.
And I guess if I can just quickly add, in order to do what I call like true community-led or community-rooted work, it is going to feel really different. It does take a lot of extra time. It takes a lot of extra energy. It takes a lot of extra commitment, and it may take some resources. It is not going to look like we're following this 1 hour agenda. You're going to have to leave time for folks to express how they feel, leave time for people to tell stories. And it may, quite frankly, not go over well with your funders the first go around. They're going to look at the human capital invested. They're going to look at the ROI, and they're going to say, like, why are we doing this? This isn't like the best for our profit margin. And it's just going to take some dedicated folks to say, guess what? It's not the best for our profit margin right now. But look at, you know, the trajectory of the success that we're going to set families, you know, up with. And it really is an intergenerational investment. And it's just really going to take some folks to really look inside and say, hey, maybe we are not the organization or the entity to do this, because we don't have enough people that see the value in taking this amount of time and energy and resource to commit into this work. But I just wanted to just uplift that it really is. I think someone put in the comment, like, well, how do we, you know, people are like, it's going to take more time. It's going to take more work. Yeah, it is. It's going to take money. It's going to take time. It's going to take less sleep. It's going to take more, you know, thought processes, maybe a couple of additional headaches. It just really, really is going to take time to vet and find people that are just that committed to the work, to the point where they don't mind doing this labor of love.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Joy, about sort of going open, eyes open, right? That it is going to take that. And if we want transformational change, which I think we do, being ready to ask what's it take to get there. Would anyone else like to jump in related to this question?
Sure, I will. Our objective, first and foremost, was to pay them what we thought that their time was actually worth. And that has paid big dividends down the road. We've had folks just like volunteer to do extra things. They're like, hey, you've already paid me to do this work. What else can I do to help out? It doesn't feel like that much of a burden because I'm already doing this other work. And the other thing that we're doing is going through and looking at what do we actually need as an organization long term? What sort of like routine day-to-day stuff do we need to make sure that we're hitting like on all cylinders? And then turning around and saying, all right, let's have a conversation amongst our parents about what is a good value for this time. What is a good value for this specific work here, instead of trying to like guess and then have the negotiation afterwards when somebody's gotten like upset because they don't feel like their time has been valued. Like put the effort in up front to figure out like what makes sense as a number for you to be here and to be engaged and to do this work, especially because rent is ridiculous right now. Childcare expenses have always been hefty. So it really will depend on your area. That number might be bigger, it might be smaller, but it really should come from them.
Thank you. Okay, I don't want to cut this off, but I want to get to some of the other questions because we have other good ones too. So we can always circle back if we have more time. So, one of the questions here is, do you have any suggestions for how we can engage caregivers who are fearful of systems that we partner with, such as child welfare and law enforcement, as well as those who are dissatisfied with our victim advocacy and mental health services?
I don't want to take up too much space here because I kind of answered a little bit in the chat, but I just think, again, it's just being really, really honest about, where you are and what you're doing. And if we know that these systems are causing harm to families, we need to acknowledge that. It's not something we could just sweep under the rug and be like, hey, let's act like this whole trauma thing didn't happen to you. We need to create space for that, acknowledge it, call it out. And if I don't feel comfortable going to CPS, don't make me go to CPS. Maybe I, am going to a football game every Saturday with the League with Boys and Girls Club. Is there a way you can meet parents there? Is there a way you can come to my church? Is there a way, that, you see we're at the crafts market every Saturday, or we have this reading group with our kids, where can you meet us in a space that's not re-traumatizing for families? And I hear a lot of folks like asking about recruitment in the chat, like, where are your trusted community leaders that are out here going through these struggles in real time? Where are the people, like I'm sitting in the WIC office with the people that we serve? Like, where are the folks that are actually going to be able to have this real talk conversation without the rest tape? Oh, I can't say this and I have to talk offline. Like, no, let folks talk to some folks that really understand what they're going through, meet people halfway about where they are. And some of these things, it may not be easy to resolve. Like, I'm not gonna, some folks are just like, I'm not gonna trust law enforcement. So you can't make that happen, right? But do they have a kid? Is that kid having a positive relationship with the SRO officer at this one high school where we know that, that SRO officer has been, a good citizen? Okay, maybe that's a channel that we go through. Maybe we ask that one SRO officer that has not, inflicted additional trauma to come and start having these community conversations, and you open it up into a town hall. So it's getting really, really creative, but not like forcing that square peg into a round hole, but really saying, okay, if you guys are traumatized and don't feel comfortable here, where do you feel comfortable, and who do we need to talk to? And let those folks, I would say, let people lead with lived experience lead it, because the people with lived experience knows what it feels to be oppressed and disenfranchised. So they're going to ask those questions and lead those focus groups in a totally different way than you could even probably imagine.
I'm gonna follow Joy there and just say that the recruitment piece, like we acknowledge, as Joy spoke about this earlier, we acknowledge that, we went to our state, our policy people, our coalition, and we asked them to tap into their networks to get parents. And like we told you, we had 3 parents that showed up at the first meeting. And then Joy was like, no, this is not, we need to reevaluate how we're going to do this. And really our recruitment strategy was to talk to other parents, right? But what if you don't have those connections? And I think that uplifts everything that Joy is saying, is that you have to figure out who has those connections by building connections with families and keeping their voice central to your work. I would say that Joy and Shayla together single-handedly built that strong foundation where parents could show up to our meetings and know that they could share whatever was going on in their life, and that was a safe, protected space, and that we would then try to provide any resources without making them feel unsafe or going through channels that they did not feel comfortable with. So I'm going to say ditto everything Joy said, but really just uplifting that the best way to connect to recruit other families is to go through families, because that they have to know that where they're coming or where they're going or whatever they're going to be sharing or talking about, it's going to be in a safe space.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to jump in? Okay. All right, so another question here, which I think is interesting, and I will say, I think this is tricky whether you're working with parents or any constituency. The question is, how do you create a unity and a shared agenda with parents who have very different priorities?
I would say
I would say,
you can
How
go ahead.
about Anna, and then we'll come back to Israel. Does that work? Oh, did we lose Anna? Okay. We'll come back to her. Israel, if you can jump in, please.
I just had an ADHD brain moment. Different priority. I would say that you would stick to the top priority, which is children, and then move on down to the second priority, which is families, and then the third priority, which is your community. A lot of people want the same thing for themselves, for their family, for their neighborhoods. And in all honesty, the real difference is just how we view the solutions to that and what we think needs to be emphasized. And I think that when you have genuine conversations with people, you can have a disagreement on what is a bigger priority, but as long as you remember that, like, hey, we're here to solve the exact same problem, we're here to achieve the exact same goal, then it makes that a lot easier. You can sort of push those to the sides as difference of like style or opinion, rather than them being like points of contention for a priority.
Thank you. Anna, are you back? I see your name in the box.
I am back. Sorry. No, again, what you say, me as a parent, work, basically seeing like work.
I'm so sorry, Anna. Your audio is coming in and out.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh no. Maybe if
Can
you
you
don't
hear me?
mind, if you have anything you wanted to share in the chat, because I know that folks would love to hear what you have to share. Okay. Did anyone else? I wish we could hear. I'm so sorry that we're missing hearing from Anna on this one. Anna, if you are able to put anything in the chat, I know that folks would love to hear what you're able to share. Tech issues are part of our journey in this world we live in, but I know folks would love to hear it. Anyone else want to jump in on this one? Okay. So we have 5 minutes. And, I would love to just take a moment for folks to share anything else as you reflect on, what you shared, what you heard from your colleagues in other states, the questions that have come in. Thank you, Anna. It's just seeing what works for parents. Yeah. That's helpful. Is there anything else, any closing thoughts that you would want to share about, what you've learned in this past year about engaging, creating these effective parent partnership strategies, or anything that you're thinking about as you look to the future? And I'll just say anyone who would like to jump in.
I'm going to jump in just because of my audio. But I'm just excited again for this opportunity. I'm thankful. As I said earlier, about the whole phrase about takes a village to raise a child. I'm all about that. And not only that, but we all know, especially me as an educator, I know that earlier is better, so if we get these parents on board at as early as 6 weeks, let's get them on board, and get those children the education they deserve, it's very important for them. And I work with children and I work at home with my own children. So I definitely know patience is the key. And I just want to push that knowledge for my children as well at home. And like I said, thankful for this opportunity and excited to see what else we can do together.
Thank you so much. And also acknowledging that Anna is joining us on her lunch break from the center where she works. So want to extend appreciation to her for making that work, and know that that is not easy.
Hey, my 3-year-old is doing 3-year-old things, but I just wanted to uplift this opportunity is monumental, and folks are really thinking that they want to have true parent involvement and do things in a different way. I would just encourage for people to include decision makers into that process and make a firm stance and commitment as an organization or institution, because it is not easy. Not everyone agrees, and not everyone is going to invest in the work, but it's going to take a lot of investment and time and commitment. So I just encourage folks to be honest and upfront about is this something we really want to do? And if the answer is no, it's okay. You're not the devil. I just think it does a disservice when we are kind of tokenizing and patronizing opportunities and not really getting into the work. We're just kind of dangling a carrot in front of parents' faces. And I think that can end up being more harmful. I've seen a group of, myself included, straight cry after a presentation of just feeling completely devalued and ignored. And it's why am I here? So I just would ask for folks to make a real commitment of hey, are we really going to try to do this? Or do we let, another entity do this? And then if you guys are in it for a long, sustainable time where we are really infrastructurally changing the way that we do things, pace yourselves, have patience, like Anna said, and pace yourselves and know we're in it for a very long time and not a good time, but just really be prepared to really do the work if that's something that folks are going to commit to.
Thank you so much. Stephanie, I saw you come off mute. We have 1 minute, so go.
I was just going to echo what Joyce said about really thinking of this as a journey, and similar to some of the race equity work that everyone's doing, that not only, I love the word giving space that she said a lot, but there's also going to be space to mess up, and as we're doing things differently, and just really just kind of making that okay, and having the even difficult conversations that might have to come up, and that's all part of this journey.
Yep, just like that. I think about that parallel thing with kids, right? It's it's the repair. Things go wrong, but it's the repair. Okay, I wish that we could keep talking about this. There are actually more questions coming in, but I do very much want to respect everyone's time. And I hope that everyone will join me in thanking our presenters for sharing your wisdom and for your candor. This is really exciting work. This is groundbreaking work. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for being here today.
Thank you.